Uh, there you go. Guys, welcome to this conversation. I would like to ask you to please mute yourself. You know what, we are doing this first presentation today. It's about incorporation. My name is Miriam Lasarte. I'm the CEO of LatAm Startups. And today we have a very special session that we love to handle always with our partners. It's Canada 101. The first session is about incorporation. So today we have Ocean Law. Ocean Law has been always, our partner for companies that are incorporating in Canada. They always have very good advice on how, people outside of Canada can incorporate a company here. So they give a very good guidance. So Jonida is actually helping us today. So she's representing Ocean Law today. So welcome, Jonida. And I think that you can start maybe introducing yourself and introducing the presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Miriam, and it's great to be here. Hi, everyone. As Miriam mentioned, I'm Jonida Kutio. I'm an associate at Ocean Law. And today's presentation is going to be about incorporating in Canada and some considerations that are unique for startups that are coming from different jurisdictions. Move forward. So let me tell you a bit about our firm. We are a boutique firm located in Toronto, and we focus mostly on business, technology, securities law, and we work a lot with technology startups and other businesses. So our areas of practice include incorporating, selling your business, and M&A, technology contracts. That may include development agreements with your developers or any terms of use, website terms, privacy policies. We also help startups protect their trademarks by registration or responding to oppositions, and help also startups with raising capital through convertible notes, safes, or a priced round, and also communicate a lot with immigration consultants to structure businesses in a way that meets the Immigration Canada's requirement for a startup visa program. What's unique about Canada is, especially for someone that is coming from a different jurisdiction, is that Canada operates on a federal level and also on a provincial level. So that might be unique coming from someone from a civil law jurisdiction that may just open a civil code to see what the law is. So it's also important to know when you're moving here, what you want to do here. Do you have a business idea and you want to start from scratch, or do you have an already operating business that you want to move here, or that operating business may already have some assets, including IP. So you may want to consider moving some of those assets to Canada to attract investments. So structuring your business in a way that meets your needs is very important. So again, the way you're going to consider whether you're expanding in Canada through a subsidiary, which means incorporating another business, or through a branch, are also considerations that we will have with you, discussing what leads you to Canada. So let's move on. As I mentioned, Canada operates on a federal and a provincial level. So Canada has 10 provinces and 3 territories, which means that when you are here, you have to see if there are laws that are covered on a federal level, because the area you're operating in is regulated based on federal laws, for example, or it might be something about financial services or health. So depending on the industry that you're in, we have to look at federal laws or provincial laws based on where you're planning to be located. As I mentioned, basically Canada is common law, but there are places in Canada like Quebec that operate based on civil law. So we have to understand the unique particularities of the jurisdiction that you want to expand to. And there are additional regulations, as I mentioned, based on the industry. So if you are in food and medicines, advertising, fintech, those things, we have to, in addition to helping you establish your business here, we have to look at helping you complying with regulatory requirements. But overall, Canada is considered by Forbes as the best country in the Americas to do business. And so basically, Canada attracts a lot of immigrants, and 20% of immigrant companies are more likely to implement innovative processes. So moving forward, determining your business, the reason why you're doing business in Canada. As I mentioned, you have to consider if it's an expansion or if it's you want to establish a new business because of the unique considerations that are attached to each way. Canada is also, if you are incorporating in Canada, there's also access to funding, which means government funding, and there are different programs like you may be eligible to apply to, like STRED or IRAP, which we can also guide companies, but also LatAm does a great job guiding companies to access those opportunities. What companies should know is that there are some requirements attached to some programs, which means that in most of the cases you need to be an incorporated entity, and there's different access to based on provincial or federally incorporated entities that may have access to different programs. So as I mentioned, you can move to Canada to expand or to start a new business. If you're moving to Canada because you already have an operating business somewhere else in the world, you can do that either by establishing a subsidiary or an affiliate, or by registering a branch. And there are differences in each. So I will briefly guide you through some of the main differences. So for a branch is not a new company. For a branch, you're just extending your business, which means that your company back home still remains liable for every claims that you may be facing in Canada, and that company will be paying basically everything. What you need to do for a branch, though, is you need to find an agent here to represent you, and you need to choose a jurisdiction that you want to register in. There are disadvantages in proceeding with a branch, which means that they might be you may not be eligible to access funding opportunities. You are required to designate an agent for service. You cannot issue equity to the new people who will be involved in the helping you establish the branch. And the tax considerations are also different that you have to consider because there's an additional branch profit of 25%. And this way you're not eligible for the startup visa program. A subsidiary is basically incorporating a new company in Canada. That company is owned 50% by your company back home, and in this way you operate a new business here. So that new company can shield the other company that you may have abroad from any liability. It can issue shares to its shareholders. It can apply for grants, and you're basically paying taxes as a Canadian entity. It's a bit more costly, and there are also maintenance requirements every year. You have to meet with your shareholders, and you have to file a notice with the applicable either Corporations Canada or the provincial entity that regulates corporations, and tell them that everything is up to date, nothing has changed, or declare any changes. And you cannot take advantage of any foreign tax credits. But generally, 99.99999 of the companies they work with proceed with a subsidiary because it gives you access to a lot more things. Okay, so the requirements. Some considerations now, if you proceed with an incorporation is, as I mentioned, where do you want to incorporate? It's ideally you want to incorporate federally because it gives you access. It's not only the prestige of having a federal corporation, but also it gives you access to more funding opportunities. But also you can use the same name in whatever jurisdiction you want without having to search the name, make sure that it's available, which is the case if you incorporate provincially. For example, you incorporate in Ontario and then you want to expand to British Columbia, then you have to make sure that you can use that same name in British Columbia. For federal companies, they have priority, so they can use the same name. But there are requirements to proceed with a federal incorporation, which means that the most important one is that you need to have at least 25% of your directors being resident Canadians. And resident Canadian means someone that is either a citizen or a permanent resident of Canada that ordinarily lives in Canada. So a lot of the startups we work with, they may not meet this requirement, so they may either consider incorporating in Ontario, or which Ontario doesn't have this requirement. You can have all your directors being non-resident Canadians, or they have relatives or someone that help them meet this requirement that lives in Canada that meet the 25%. You're not required to have any nominal amount. You can issue shares to the shareholders at a nominal value, being $1 or 0.001. And but there are additional considerations if you want to move your IP so that the company can have assets that we can discuss with later. It's also important to have, when you are incorporating, is to consider who will be running the Canadian business and having the proper agreement in place with them. We have companies that come from all over the world, and the way of doing business in different countries may differ. Some countries may not rely so much on having written contracts, or they have shorter contracts. We always advise companies to show very clearly who owns the IP. So if you are considering transferring any IP from your foreign jurisdiction to Canada, there must be clear IP assignment agreements. Or if your founders are creating new IP for the new company, they are applying for a new trademark, they are developing new software, they are licensing what you have back home, it's very important that you have a clear chain of ownership, because if you, in the future, you want to seek investments, investors would want to see a clear chain of ownership. Let's move on. So some considerations after you decide what jurisdiction you want to go in, and for example, you want to go on a federal level or on a provincial level, you have to, basically the statutes and the laws are mirror statutes, although they may have some unique differences, like the residency of the directors. So generally, you need to know who your directors are, who your officers, and who you're issuing shares to, which means who are the shareholders. For example, if your company back home is going to be, if you're establishing a subsidiary, your company back home is going to be owning 50%. So here goes your 50% of the shares of the new company. You may want to issue shares to the founders individually. So these people are going to be your shareholders, and the shareholders are the ones that control who the directors will be, and the directors are the ones that control who the officers will be. The directors are the people that comprise the board, and the board decides on major decisions of the direction of the company. So who can be a major supply agreement that you want to sign, or hiring some key employees. And the directors are the ones that appoint the officers being the chief executive, the secretary, the treasurer, or CTO. And the officers are the ones that run the business on a day-to-day basis. So it's important to know that you may have the same person hold all these three roles, being a shareholder, director, and officer, or you may have different requirements based on immigration requirements. Either you can speak with the immigration consultant to have someone have a unique role to meet some requirements, like someone that you have to show that they're running the business, that is a director or an officer. So raising capital is, if you are anticipating to raise capital, you might want to consider issuing a larger number of shares. If you know that the company will be owned exclusively by your company back home, then you can issue 100 shares if you don't expect to receive investments. But if you are considering that in the future you're developing something new, or you're transferring your IP to Canada to make it more interesting for investors, then you may want to issue 1 million or 10 million shares to allow for some flexibility if you want to start issuing shares to new investors, or start issuing options to your employees' advisors. As I mentioned, those shares can be at a nominal value, so you don't have to actually put in capital, but issuing a large number of shares anticipates future actions without you having to do a share split to accommodate new action. Also, your shares, generally founders get common shares, common voting shares, but you may want to be forward-looking to anticipate a new class of shares, which is common, be non-voting, for people that you don't want to make decisions on your company. So that you can give those common B shares to non-voting to your option holders, to your employees, to your contractors, or whoever you want to incentivize by shares. I think my presentation is lagging. Okay, so let's see. Yes, some immigration considerations. You have to, as I mentioned, LatAm is doing a great job recommending immigration consultants, but we can also recommend some immigration consultants that you can speak with to structure your business to meet those immigration requirements. So if you, for example, are proceeding with a startup visa program, you know that you have to issue, the founders have to own at least 50% of the company, and that each founder needs to own at least 10% of the company. And you have to consider when restructuring your business when that 10% is the minimum requirement, because you may have angel investors joining. So you have to know that as you're being diluted along the way, by the time that Immigration Canada assesses your application, you are at least at that minimum requirement of shares. So we help you structure your business and prepare your cap table and the documents that you need to meet those requirements. There are also other immigration considerations like intercompany transfers, who can transfer to the Canadian company on what visa requirements and what roles do they need to hold in the company, like to show that they're running the business. So these are things that we are going to discuss with you. If you, as I mentioned before, if you're planning on hiring employees and contractors, it's very important to have proper agreements with them that may not be the 1-2-page agreement that you may have seen. So it's important that these agreements include a very explicit IP assignment clause for whatever IP is being developed belongs to the company. And it's important that they also have confidentiality provisions so that you know that your trade secrets or whatever you are developing is not going to be shared publicly. There are also additional considerations for technology companies. As I mentioned, if you are in a specific industry like agri-tech or health tech, edu-tech, we will also help you on the technology side with the agreements that you need to establish yourself, like SaaS agreements or software as a service agreements, platform as a service, terms of use, any assignments, any particular compliance with regulatory requirements. But also, as I mentioned before, if you have any IP developed back home, we can help you structure the agreement to transfer it to Canada if you want the Canadian company to attract investments and you want to show that the IP is contained in the Canadian company. And this was my very brief presentation. I think the brief is very fun. So I will allow for time for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jonida. So I have a question right now here from Patricia, and he said that thanks for the presentation. If my partner has a family business in Chile, but we want to open a business in Canada, can we open a new company, just the two of us, and take it to Canada?
Absolutely. You can start by incorporating a new business in Canada. The question is, what is going to be the relationship with the company in Chile? Is that company going to be involved in any way? Do you want that company to issue shares to that company? Or do you want to start something unique in Canada and you don't necessarily want to rely? If that company in Chile has any IP that you want a license, you definitely need to show that you are properly licensing it to use. And you may have, you should also consider speaking with an immigration or a tax advisor to help you structure it from a tax efficient way.
Okay, perfect. So I'm not sure, Patricia, do you want to open your mic? Maybe if, it was, the answer that you were looking for? Yeah, no worries. In the meantime, guys, if you have any other question, I have another question here. Is there any specific consideration in the province of Quebec?
That's a very good question. To be honest, one of our lawyers comes from Quebec, so he would be the one to answer any specific questions. I haven't worked on any Quebec companies, but instead of looking at the act, we would look at the Civil Code of Quebec to see any requirements. I can definitely connect you with our associate that has studied in Montreal.
Yeah, Patricia, you have now your open microphone.
Yes, thank you. Hey, how are you? Again, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
my question basically is like, my friend has owns a family company right here that they work with how it's called, like water bottles, something like that, you know. So he really wants to move to Canada, and he's asking me like, will you move with me to open this business in Canada? Because like their family, they are not going to move at all from Chile. They are kind of old right now, and they are not considering to move to Canada. So my question is, if we make a new business company, can we move it over there? I know you say yes, but how does it work? You know, we are going to use the same name, we use the same patterns and everything, but on a new partnership, you know what I mean?
I see what you mean. So to begin with, you mentioned the name. That doesn't mean that the name will necessarily be available in Canada. So we have to do the searches, and sometimes companies try to keep the initial distinctive element, so whatever that may be, but they add something like technology or software or water bottles, whatever they want to distinguish it from many existing companies. So it's very important to do that search to make sure that it's available on the business side, but also on the trademark side. If you want to establish that brand protection, then which is different from incorporating, we have to make sure that that name is available for you to trademark it. Now, from the business perspective, moving to Canada, what does it mean for the two of you from an immigration perspective? Let's start from that. Does it mean that both of you can work in Canada, or you have to first think, how are you moving here from an immigration perspective for us to be able to structure your business properly? Does any of you have PR? Or a work visa, or is any one of you a citizen?
No, we don't have nothing of that. We're just thinking about like moving the company over there and start working over there.
Yeah.
So again, we would discuss all these things with you on the call, but I would recommend that first you speak with an immigration consultant, because they can tell you what you're eligible from an immigration perspective, and then we can discuss together if you meet those requirements from a business perspective. Because if your immigration consultant tells you that immigration visa is your best chance, then we have to speak about what you are required to do for immigration visa, because you may be required to have an invitation letter from a designated institution that you may not qualify for. So these are the considerations to think about. Or you may apply for a visa to just eliminate that requirement, and then we can proceed with the corporation without having to go through the structuring of the immigration requirements.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, but excuse me, just one question, sorry. So either way, I have to talk to an immigration lawyer. That's what I get?
This is what I would say as a first step.
And Patricia, that's why I wanted to tell you that our next session is about immigration. So we always we always have the two sessions together, because we know one is dependable of the other. So yeah, so you will have the answers there. And just to give a perspective to the audience on, what are the different cases we have in LatAm startups. We have cases where, people are not willing to immigrate, but they still want to open a corporation here, which is okay. We have, those cases within our community and among our community. And then we also have cases when people actually want to immigrate. And then, it will depend. There are different options for entrepreneurs to immigrate. So it's not just one option per se, but it will give you a different perspective of what you can do and what you can't. Now, many times what Jonida was trying to tell us here is that it depends of what type of company do you have in your home country, or if you want to have a company from scratch here in Canada, because sometimes you want to link the company that you have already in your home country, or you just want to start with a new one. Either way, in our community, we work through whatever is the case, right? Sometimes, for example, particularly, we don't work with people that have, let's say, companies in ideation. We work with companies that are already running. But if you have an idea and you want to put it in place, we can probably recommend you a different program that can help you out to go through that path too. So for either case, you guys will have the opportunity to reach out OCL Law and maybe have that discussion, which is very particular in different cases. So I'm not sure if anyone else has here a different case. And by the way, for those that are coming from Latin America and you need a Spanish speaker here, you can speak with me in Spanish, maybe ask the question in Spanish, and I can pass the question to Yunida as well. So anyone else with any other question? Okay, so far I don't see any other question. But again, this session has been recorded for everyone for those that didn't, come on time. In exactly 30 minutes, we are going to start with the immigration session. So you guys can maybe exit the call and enter again, but it's the same link. So we are going to stay here with this link. In the meantime, any other questions, you can pass it to me. I can certainly pass it to Yunida. Yunida, thank you so much for being here today. She's doing an exceptional job today because they have a free day today. We're having like special mental health day today. So I really thank you for being here today, and for you guys for attending this session, Incorporation session.
All right.
Hey, Olga.
Hi, Miriam.
Everyone is ready here because we were just finish another presentation here for Incorporation, so we were
All right.
So we are entering right away the session. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. A pleasure as usual.
So Olga, while you maybe share your presentation and everything, I'm going to give a small introduction of you guys. So for all of you that are here, Olga Picalau is our immigration lawyer. One Immigration is a company that has been associated with us, helping our startups in different ways to immigrate to Canada. So you guys, or some of you may have some questions around startup visa program, but be mindful that there are many ways to immigrate to Canada. So startup visa program is not the only option. It's one of the options that you are going to hear here. So welcome, Olga. You can start anytime when you are ready.
Okay, thank you, Miriam. Let me just share my screen here. Give me just 1 second. Sorry, just a second. For some reason, it went from the end rather than the beginning.
That happens to me sometimes, so don't worry.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I think that this should be the one that I'm sharing. Okay, and the people today, where are they from, Miriam? Just so I have an idea.
Oh, that's a good question. Like I haven't asked everyone. Maybe you guys want to share in the chat. Where are you from today? I know that there is a person here from Chile. I'm not sure the others. Where are you from? I have from Colombia, Brazil. Okay, so far I have Chile, Colombia, Brazil. Anyone else? Cape Town.
Oh, that's exciting.
That's exciting, yeah.
All right, so I will just start quickly a little bit about our agenda today. So I'll be introducing One Immigration.
Okay.
And Afterwards, we'll be talking about the three pillars of the Canadian immigration system and what kind of the plans are for the next 2 years, about the options to come to Canada permanently, using the economic and the business immigration programs. We'll also explore a little bit the possibilities of coming temporarily to then from inside Canada, apply for permanent residency, and then closing thoughts and questions and answers. So I know that a lot of you will have questions about the startup visa program because that's one of the highlights of this meeting today. So perhaps when we get to the startup visa, then we'll do the questions and answers and then move forward to the other programs. All right, so One Immigration was founded in 2013. I am one of the co-founders. It started as a one-man operation and it turned to be a team, currently a team of 15 with another 3 consultants. Over the years, we've helped over 26,000 people with their immigration plans to Canada. We are one of the top 3 elected immigration consultancies in Vancouver for the 4th consecutive year. We provide personalized and strategic consultancy services for visa and immigration processes. So myself, I'm the consultant and also one of the co-founders. And then we have Renato Feldman, which is the other co-founder of One Immigration. And we also have Rita that joined us about a year ago. So looking at the economic and business immigration programs and opportunities to live in Canada on a temporary basis, what are the targets, I would say, for the next 2 years? And this was actually recently updated. So the government, if we see here that they were planning on bringing 451,000 in 2024, they are trying to double that now. So with the COVID happening in 2020 and the borders being closed, we are now struggling with the labor market here. So the intent is to bring more immigrants over the years than we've previously had. So the current immigration minister, it's actually very pro-immigration. They have introduced different programs for people to immigrate to Canada, something that was not even planned before, which is very exciting. So we're still waiting. They announced that they're working on another immigration program that would facilitate the immigration for the people that are already in Canada, which is great because everybody that comes either studying or working, the goal is to become a permanent resident ultimately. So permanent residency, we're going to be talking about the startup visa program, express entry, and provincial nominee program. These are kind of at the federal level, these are the programs that the go-to when we talk about the person choosing an immigration strategy. So the startup visa program, the target are the entrepreneurs, immigrant entrepreneurs that are innovative, that they will bring their business to Canada, will employ Canadians, will make the economy prosperous, and they would also be able to compete on a global scale. So the eligibility requirements is to have a qualifying business, up to 5 applicants with 10% or more of the voting rights. They have to have a CLB 5 in English, so that is a mandatory. Not have any medical or criminal charges, and of course have the letter of support from the incubator, from the accelerated, from the designated organization, and be able to compete on a global scale. Again, startup visa program, it's a very good program in terms of immigration because it allows you to come first on a work permit to be able to actually work in Canada while your permanent residency is being processed. Processing time, not that good. That's why this work permit is so important, because with the start of COVID, so right before COVID hit, the processing times were anywhere between 2 to 6 months. They were very ideal. Now, after COVID started, unfortunately, this is a program that has a huge backlog. So we're talking about at least 18 to 24 months before they are going to finalize the permanent residency. Of course, this processing time can go down. That's not something that it's for sure. We do hope that the government will take action and will prioritize this program, because it's very important that you guys come to Canada and are able to actually execute everything as per your business plan. But as of right now, just to give you an idea, it's between 18 to 24 months, and then the work permit processing time, it will depend on the country where you are applying from. So I'm not sure if you guys have questions about the program that I can answer before we move forward to the next program.
Yeah, this is a program that we normally get the most questions. So guys, I know that sometimes, information can be a little bit difficult for you to process in regards of what you see in the website, and the government website is different from what sometimes you hear from the designated organizations. I just want to say that, LatAm is one of the designated organizations, and we know that one thing that I can tell you right now here is that the letter of support doesn't guarantee you a visa per se. It supports a case for startups that we see that will have a good match for the market. But at the end of the day, it's the government that kind of give the decision and the visa. If any other, if you have here any different in the market, please be careful. Just make sure that you understand, the scope of the startup visa program. So you may not have a question right now here for Olga, but if you have a question, I see some questions right now. So is there a minimum money amount that has to be invested? This is a question from Enrique. And who initiated the startup visa program?
I'm sorry, if there is an X amount to be?
That has to be invested.
To be invested in the business?
I guess so. Enrique, I think we can take, he said yes. So I guess that Olga, I'm not sure if you agree
that's
with
not
me.
that's not going to be with me
in
regards to how much you need to invest or how much you want to invest. I have seen companies that that were open and there was not a huge capital there and they were successful. So it's not that much about the investment. I think that what the government wants, they want to see that business will be viable. And this is the most important thing. Of course, there has to be a very clear business plan that will show how that is going to happen. What is the projected revenue? How are you guys going to operate? So all of this is basically included in your business plan. It's not to say that if you invest $1 million in that specific business, but the business doesn't seem viable, or the government or the officer thinks that I don't think that this is going to actually work here, he will refuse, even though you have invested that much. It's not all about the money.
Yeah, it has to make sense, guys. So just to give you an idea, I don't feel like this is a type of program for people in ideation per se. This is a program that in our view, the government is expecting that you already have a business in your home country, you're expanding, you are selecting Canada for being that global partner, to grow global. And also to give you an idea, 97% of businesses in Canada are small, medium businesses. Like Canada is not expecting to see another small, medium business moving here. What they want to see is that other 3% companies that can be highly scalable, highly that have that capacity to grow fast. So being said that, depending of the sector, depending what type of business you're proposing, it will come with an operational cost, especially for the first year. For this reason, there is no specific fund that you have to have. It depends of what type of business you have. So, and all that comes, with the work we do with some of the startups in business plans. Now, it's different from the fund that you require to have to live in Canada. Those are two different type of funds. And maybe for that question, maybe Olga, you can clarify that part, right?
Yes. So the amount of funds that you have to prove in order to be granted the work permit and the amount to prove for the permanent residency are very different. So since you are coming here as an entrepreneur and you're not coming here as a salaried person, you have to prove that you would be able to support yourself for 52 weeks with bank statements that will prove that you have that sufficient amount. And it's based on the family unit. So if it's just yourself, it's going to be a little bit over 20,000 that you have to prove for the work permit. If you have a spouse, then that adds more. So it really depends on how many people are coming. Now, for permanent residency, the amount is a little bit lower. It's very similar, if not the same, with the other program, the Express Entry system. So for a person, you have to show that you have $13,500 in your bank account or something like this. So it's that this amount of money is required. You have to show it for both for the work permit and for permanent residency. You have to prove with bank statements for the past 6 months that you have this amount in your bank account. And keep in mind that this amount that you are proving for permanent residency, you will need to have the same amount throughout the processing of your application. So you need to make sure that once they get to process your application, let's say 18 to 20 months later, they will request again the proof of funds. Because of the processing times, it's not ideal. So the officer is going to have to look at everything again, and it's going to have to be fresh information and documentation. The same as they will perhaps ask for a new medical exam, for a new police certificate, for a new business plan, an updated one, to make sure that you actually have been active, that the company didn't just do nothing during the entire time. So they will request the proof of funds again once they're ready to finalize the processing of your permanent residency application.
Thank you, Olga. I hope that is clear for you, Enrique. If it's not, just let us know. If you have any follow-up question after this one, it will be good. I have another question in regards of, if who initiated the startup visa program, George. I'm not sure if you want us to give, kind of maybe short summary of how the startup visa program started. But while you clarify that, George, I will respond the other two questions. What are you explaining applies for Quebec, Olga?
The what, sorry?
What you're explaining applies to Quebec. So I know the startup visa program doesn't work. It's the only province that doesn't work with. Yeah.
So Quebec has their own immigration program, provincial one, but when we talk about startup visa, we talk federal level, which does not include Quebec.
And the other question, Quebec has a different type of program, and probably you can tap on the Quebec programs later.
No, unfortunately not, because they have their own, their own
immigration system.
That's right, and we don't deal with Quebec per se, because it's very specific. You have to speak French, so it's very different than the federal one.
Yeah, just for your information, I immigrated through Quebec, Montreal, so I know that they can be very specific. Is at the time that I immigrated was not that hard, but I know it's different rules that the rest of the country. And,
so one. So with Quebec, here on the federal level, the only business program really is the startup visa. Now, when we look at Quebec, they have a golden visa program, and that's basically investor program. You invest, you leave with the government of Quebec around $1 million, and then you have to prove that you have that you're worth at least another 2 million, and then you leave that with them for about 5 years, and then they will return it to you. Of course, no interest and nothing, but this is their immigration program at the Quebec level.
Right. And well, again, George, if you want to elaborate a little bit more in your question, then we can answer that too. And the other question that I have for you, Olga, comes from Patricio. He says, he's asking, does age matters to apply to any of the other programs, any of the programs?
All the programs were the startup visa, because for the startup visa, it doesn't matter. Your age does not matter. Now, for all the other programs, yes, your age is very important. If we talk about the express entry system, then that after you turn 30, your chances are just diminishing every single year. If we talk about provincial programs, some provinces will will love to see you being between 18 and 35, but then some other provinces, they don't really care about the age, they care about how much you're going to be making here. So it all depends.
Yeah. So I don't see any other follow-up questions. I just have the question from George about who initiated the program, but I guess that the answer for that part was the government of Canada. 2013 it was, Olga?
Around that time, yes.
Yeah, so initiated as a pilot project, and then 2017 become a federal program, and it has been running since then. So yeah, I guess Olga, we can continue.
Awesome. Okay, so next one is the express entry, and this is what we currently have in place when we talk about immigration at the federal level. So express entry was replaced by that list of professions in demand that the government of Canada had up until 2015, that if you were a lawyer or a doctor, your position was there, you were able to apply for permanent residency. In 2015, the government introduced express entry, which is a system that accepts the applications coming from federal skilled workers, people that have at least 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada, overseas, sorry, and the Canadian experience class. Canadian experience class is for the individuals that are already here in Canada. They have at least 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada, and the federal skilled trades. So it doesn't really matter how you enter the system. What matters is how many points you are awarded based on your age, education, work experience, English, French. Do you have a job offer in Canada? Do you have siblings in Canada? So these are basically what is important for the express entry. The first thing with the steps with the express entry is to first find out if you're eligible. If you are eligible, then you are able to create your profile. Only after you create your profile and are in the express entry pool, you are eligible for an invitation to apply. The express entry has 1,200 points, and 600 of these points are given if you have a nomination from any province in Canada, which most of the time will require a job offer. So without the nomination from any province, the max that you can achieve is a little bit over 600. From 2015 to 2017, nobody with less than 450 points was ever invited to apply. And then in 2017, this score dropped to 413 points. And then in 2018, it started going up again. 2019, the lowest was 438. And then 2020 was 430. And that's when at the end of 2020, due to the pandemic, the government paused the invitations to apply for people from the federal skilled worker category, because these were people that were outside Canada. and there was no way for them to enter. So they focused 100% on the people that were in Canada with that 1 year of experience. And that's when in February 2021, and I think that this is going to make history, they dropped the score to 75 points. And that's when they invited 27,000 people at once. And from about April to September, the score has been very low, 357 to about 404 points. And that's what created a huge backlog because they were inviting a lot of people, but they didn't hire more people to process those applications. So in September last year, they paused the invitations to apply for the Canadian Experience class as well. And in they just resumed the invitations again in July of this year. They started pretty high. It was expected because the system was paused for so long that there were a lot of qualified applicants with a pretty high score in the pool. So they started at 557 and the score is currently going down. It reached, I believe, 491 was the last draw. So we're seeing the points going down, but of course slowly, because if not, it will create another backlog and the processing times are going to be again 18 to 24 months. So the steps: find out if you're eligible based on your abilities, and your score. You will receive an invitation to apply. You will need to get your documents ready. And then once you receive the invitation to apply, you have 60 days to submit the application, which is a very short time. You have to have everything, police clearances, medical examination, and so on. And then submitting the application, processing time for the express entry is very good currently. It's between 3 to 6 months. So it is an express process and program. Things to know, that it is point-based, which is very important. So here, I know Patricio, I believe, was the one that asked about the age. So with the express entry, after you turn 30, you lose 5 points each year that passes. So if you are now at 450 and are turning 30 or 31, 5 points make a huge difference when we talk about the express entry. Education is very important. Looking at a good profile, the person would be under 30 or up to 35. They would have 2 certifications, at least a bachelor's and another 1-year certificate, or they would have a master's degree, ideally. Not that many people with PhDs, but lots of people with master's degrees. English and French. English and French is super important. So if we talk about English, if with the startup visa 5 is sufficient, with express entry you would need at least a 9. Anything lower than a 9, unless you have a nomination from the province, is not going to be good. Work experience outside Canada, very important, but up to 3 years only it counts for points. And of course, work experience in Canada is even more valuable because you get an additional 45 to 50 points for your work experience in Canada. Your job and your experience has to be skilled, so it cannot be an entry-level or semi-skilled position. And then the pool and the ITA. It's one thing to be in the pool of the express entry, and it's another thing to actually get an invitation and submit a PR application. So a lot of people say, oh, yes, I've applied for permanent residency, but what they meant is they just created a profile and are in the pool and available to submit an application.
I have a question here,
yes.
Olga.
Yes.
Lila asked how we get to know if we have a score and how much is it now?
Yes, so on the Government of Canada's website, there is a CRS tool, Comprehensive Ranking System tool, that you can use in order to assess and to simulate your score. So, okay, I'm 30, and this is my education, and this is my English test score, and so on. And then it's going to give you your score based on your profile. It's a tool free of charge provided by the Government of Canada. However, in order for you to register actually and have an application, have a registration in the pool, you have to take an English test first, and you have to do the equivalency of your degree if it's not from Canada. So those two things are required before you are able to register.
Okay, thank you. Lila, if you have any other follow-up questions, let us know. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so provincial nominee program. So aside from the federal system, which is the express entry, we also have, every province actually has a provincial program, which is designed to attract or to maintain the labor market that is needed for that specific province. So since we know that the nomination is worth 600 points, these are very sought after programs. So each province has a different one, and most of them are going to have the stream for skilled workers, international graduates, international postgraduates. Sometimes they will have also program for entry-level or semi-skilled workers as well. So the international postgraduate program, in most of them are basically people that take a master's degree, either in Ontario, BC, and so on. They are able to go through an immigration process that is a little bit easier because it does not require a job offer, because almost all of them, all the provinces will require that you have a job offer. In Ontario, for example, there is a human capital stream. There is a stream from French-speaking individuals that do not require a job offer. So the government from Ontario, the provincial one, will actually look through the pool if you have authorized it when you created it. And depending on your score, depending if you have English and French, they may send you an invitation to apply for their program. Of course, there is an extra cost. But applying for the program and getting the nomination, that's how, if you were in the pool with 400 points, adding another 600 would bring you to 1,000 points. If the score now is 491, you would get instantly an invitation to apply. So some provinces also have streams for business immigration. Most of them, the investment, it's going to start at about 175,000, 200,000, and then proving a net worth of at least 400 or 600,000, depending on the province. I would say that if we look at the business immigration stream and the regular streams, be it the skilled worker, students, international graduates, international postgraduates, the approval rate is definitely higher for the skilled workers and international students. It's very, I'm not sure why, but that is the case with the provincial programs that are aimed at the business immigration. So looking at temporary paths, moving on to permanent ones, we have the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, or LMIA, and we also have the International Mobility Program, LMIA exempt. So a temporary for the LMIA process. So what is an LMIA? An LMIA can give you an additional 50 points towards your express entry, but the LMIA does not depend on you. Let's say that you are looking for a job in Canada and you have found an employer that is willing to give you that job offer, then the employer's responsibility is to apply for an LMIA. So an LMIA is a labor market impact assessment. The way it works is the employer has to advertise that position for at least 4 weeks. And then if they weren't able to secure a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident to do that job, that's when they can apply to Service Canada. There is a fee involved, which is $1,000. And if assessing the application, Service Canada can give a positive, neutral, or negative decision. So if it is a positive or a neutral one, then the employer would provide you with the LMIA, so you can then apply for your work permit. The advantages of the LMIA are very good. I mean, it's a win-win situation, I would say, because the employee is looking to come to Canada. The employer is willing to assist with the process. We don't see all employers doing it because the person has to be highly skilled, talented in order for them to do it, because it has a cost involved, and it's also time consuming to go through the entire process. For the employee, the only disadvantage really is that it's a closed permit, which means you are only able to work for this specific employer at this specific location for this duration. It's a 1 year or 2 years. So if for any reason something happened, things didn't work out, and you either quit or you were fired, you are not able to continue working in Canada. So you would have to switch to either being a visitor or any other status. Okay, so the International Mobility Program, LMIA exempt, the intra-company transfer. So the ICT is also a very good way for entrepreneurs to come to Canada. So if Startup Visa already provides you with the opportunity of applying for both at the same time, with the intra-company transfer, it's going to be first applying for the work permit, and then after that, once you're here, once you have the experience of at least 1 year, that's when you can submit an application for permanent residency. So let's say you have a business overseas, and you have been working for that business for at least 12 months in the last 3 years, and now you are ready to open a branch, affiliate, a sister company here in Canada. You would open the company in Canada, and then you would request to be transferred to the Canadian branch so you can set up operations. People that can do that are only the ones that work in senior management. So you cannot really transfer anybody. It's either senior management or specialized knowledge, and you really have to emphasize what that specialized knowledge is. However, after you have requested the transfer to Canada, once you arrive here, you will be working for the Canadian branch. That means you will be receiving a salary for that. It's not as an entrepreneur under the startup visa where you just prove the funds in the bank and then you are able to come. Here, you would actually have to be an employee on the payroll. And after 1 year of your employment with the closed work permit in a senior management position, you are able to obtain 245 extra points towards your express entry profile. So this is an amazing score, the 245, adding with your education and English, which is required anyhow, you would already have more than 500 points at least. Advantages of the intra-company transfer: that you can live and operate your business in Canada. Of course, you can bring your family with you from the moment that you are here with a work permit and it's a skilled position, then yes, you can bring your family. Access to free education for school-age children. Bring key employees with specialized knowledge, but be able to actually explain the specialized knowledge of that person. It's a fast process. It's a fast process for the work permit initially, and then permanent residency, you would have to wait for 1 year before you are able to submit the application. Study permit and open work permit for spouses. So this is probably one of the most common ways of people coming to Canada. Whenever you decide, I would like to immigrate to Canada, and maybe you're 40 or 45, you have plenty of experience, but because of your age, your score in the express entry is not ideal. You try to, perhaps you try to find a job and you're not able to secure a job, but you want to move and you have a deadline. I want to move by September 2023, for example. The only way of you actually making sure that you are going to be here by September 2023 is looking for a course, enrolling in a course. And then once you have the letter of acceptance, applying for the study visa and come to Canada. That's when you know that by September 2023, you're going to be here. Your kids are going to attend school as well, and so on. So the studies are a very good and common way of coming to Canada, especially if you are a couple or a family. Because for a single person to pay Canadian international tuition plus and being only able to work 20 hours a week, it's a little bit tough. Now, if you are a couple, then the student can still work up to 20 hours a week, and then the spouse can actually has an open work permit and can work as many hours as they wish. So that's how it kind of balances a little bit. Now, not all the institutions would give the spouse the right or the eligibility to accompany you in a work permit. So this have to be you have to get admission from a public post-secondary institution, or if it is a private one, it has to be one that confers degrees, which is an associate degree, master degree, bachelor degree, and so on. So the requirements: student must attend the designated learning institution as a full-time in a course that is PGWP eligible. The advantages are that you can already come, live, and work in Canada, provides you time to adjust to a new culture, and later on apply for permanent residency. And again, bring your family, which is very important. Disadvantages: it can be costly. It can and it will be costly for an international student, and can take a few years until you actually reach your goal of becoming a permanent resident. However, after you come and study in Canada, let's say you took a course of at least 8 months, upon the completion of your course of study, you are able to apply for the post-graduation work permit, which we call PGWP. In accordance, so it will be granted for the same period of time that you have studied. So if you've studied for 8 months, then you'll be granted a permit for 8 months, so you can put in practice everything that you've learned during your course of study. Most common way of you to actually take a course of study would be to take one of at least 2 years, which would give you 3 years, which is the max time that you can get a post-graduation work permit for. So the post-graduation work permit allows you to remain in Canada and work full-time after you complete your certificate, diploma, and degree. You don't need a job offer to apply for the PGWP and can work anywhere. It's an open work permit. Requirements are that you have completed a program of at least 8 months, that you always studied full-time, and studied full-time at a DLI that has programs eligible for PGWP. The tricky part is that if you came as a couple and you finished your program and you are eligible to apply for the PGWP, however, in order for your spouse to be able to apply for an extension of their work permits, you have to have a job offer in a skilled position. It cannot be an entry-level or semi-skilled. If that's not the case, then your spouse would have to transition to a visitor record, so just to be able to accompany you until you receive that job offer in a skilled position, and then they can switch back to being a worker. Advantages of the PGWP: great way to live and work in Canada, provides you time to adjust to the new culture and bring your family. Disadvantages: so not really a disadvantage, more of a rule. It's the fact that you can only be granted a PGWP once in your lifetime. So that's why it's very important that you choose the length of the program accordingly. Because if you come for 1 year program and then you are given just 1 year, but you need that 1 year in order to have the Canadian experience and get more points, when you complete the 1 year, you're no longer able to stay in Canada because your permit is expiring. And even if you choose to take another program now of 2 years, unfortunately, you'll never receive the PGWP again. So there are plenty of ways to come to Canada. It's a matter of deciding how dedicated or committed you are to this, because there are a lot of people that think, oh yes, I would like to go to Canada, and then when you know that you have to study English, you have to take that CLB9, you have to do the equivalency, you have to a lot of them, they don't want to do anything anymore because they think it's too hard. So it is just a matter of finding out, oh, is this for me? Am I able to do that? And immigration, it's following the recipe. You have the goal, how do I reach it? And then just go for it. Applying by yourself or using a consultant. This is very particular to each person's decision to hire or not a consultant. Most of my clients ask me, oh, should I do it by myself? Should I? And it's just a matter of how much time do you have and dedication. Again, are you willing to read that 13 pages instruction guide and then start? Are you willing to invest the time into this? Some people don't have the time to invest. That's why they prefer to leave it with somebody that does this professionally every single day. And especially people that are applying for permanent residency, you know, it's a big step. It's a huge investment, and you don't want to do anything wrong. Now, there are people that have the time to research everything and are able to do it. It's not something that is out of this world. Oh my God, just a consultant or a lawyer can do it. It's just assessing your needs and your situation. Maybe you have previous refusals of a visitor visa or a study visa or whichever other visa that could impact the next application and needs to be explained. Anyway, we are here to help. I know it's been
it's a lot of information. I understand.
Yes, it's a lot of information.
The immigration session is always one of the longest we have because precisely there are so many options and there are so many things to consider to come to Canada for those that are considering that option. I have a first question here, Olga, from Patricia.
Yes.
And he said that what kind of degree do you have to take to apply for this program for post-graduation? So I'm not sure, Patricia, can you tell us which one of the programs that that maybe Olga was?
Are you talking about the post-graduation work permit, to be granted this post-graduation work permit?
Yes, he said yes.
Yes, so
Okay.
You can take any certificate, diploma, or degree program. The most important thing is where you're going to take this course, at which institution. It has to be a public post-secondary institution. So we have public and private. It's very different from other countries because usually the private in other countries are the good ones and the most important, and here is different. So the public ones, is not that it's free, it's the fact that they are funded by the federal government. That's basically the difference. So when you go on the IRCC website, they now have a list of the designated learning institutions that it's a drop down depending the province to province, and they will have the already there, they will have the mention, is this program and is this institution eligible for the PGWP? If it's not on that list, then it's not a good program to take because it's not going to give you the advantage of the PGWP.
Right. So that's good for consideration. In regards of the last thoughts, you know, that Olga was sharing with you guys, and if anyone has any other question about immigration, please do it here. You know, guys, either way you are thinking to go to the States, you're going to go to Europe, you know, you're thinking to immigrate or put a company, she's right about that. This takes a lot of work. For whatever, you know, destination you want to have, this takes a lot of work. It's important for you to consider that much of the time and the investment that you are going to put on this. And Olga, maybe, you know, you can probably share with us while we are waiting here for any other questions that maybe somebody has, in regards of immigration. Can you share with us, just briefly, what are the most common mistakes that you see when people are applying for any type, from work permit to permanent residence, besides of not perhaps reading or not considering time, processing, all those type of things? What else they should consider based on mistakes?
I think that the most common ones, if we talk about the visas, temporary resident visas, it's people going just by what it's given them in the list. This is the most common, like, oh, but they didn't ask me for, I don't know, the proof that I have a business, for example, or that I have a property, or that I have, or that I'm employed for, I don't know how many years. They just asked me for this form, and that's it. Yes, the government didn't ask you, but there is a button there, which is, oh, you can add a letter of explanation or anything to this extent. So whenever you're applying for a visitor visa, work visa, study visa, you always have to prove that you will go back at the end of your stay. Even though you come to Canada and then after that apply for a permanent residency and so on, that's a different story. But the first visa, or maybe the second and the third, first visitor and then study and then work, you have to prove that you will go back to your home country. And you prove that with your ties to your home country. If you are a business owner, with the proof of the business exists, incorporated and so on, you have to, if you're employed, again, the employment letter, properties that you may have, and then financial is very important. You need to prove that you have the funds to come and visit Canada, or if it's a study visa, that you have the funds to prove that you have how to pay your course and to support yourself while here in Canada. And when we talk about the permanent residency, the most common one are incomplete applications. Oh, you've sent your police certificate and you send the translation, but didn't think that you should include also the original, so they know from what was translated from what. So whenever an application is incomplete, what happens is the officer is not going to ask you for anything. The officer is going to return it as they've never received it. And this may be troublesome for somebody that, let's say, when they applied, they had a dependent child of 21 years old, and they could include them with their application. And then when they received their application back, the child turned 22 and now is not going to be part of that application anymore. So incomplete applications, and also people going, there are a lot of questions around, do you have any medical inadmissibility? Did you ever apply and was refused a visa for Canada or any other country? And people just go, no, 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 even though they have had a previous refusal. And that can be something very, very tricky, because the officer can ban you for misrepresentation because you have not answered truthfully. So these are probably the most common ones.
No, thank you for that. I couldn't summarize better. Those kind of things we also see in our own community here of entrepreneurs when they are trying to send documentation. So guys, again, this is a step that you have to take very carefully. And this is why we are putting like immigration and incorporation in the same session. And the third session is about funding, because we want you to also understand what is in the market around funding, so you understand why is the financial situation has to be stable for the first year. It's very important that you understand also when you are moving to Canada, is going to be an expensive country. Sometimes people don't understand how expensive can be. Any country, again, like you are going to move out of your country, is going to be an expensive situation. So once again, Olga, I want to thank you for being here today. This session has been, again, recorded from the beginning, so you guys are going to have access to this session. So, you can review information, and maybe if you have any other questions, I will pass Olga's email so you can contact her directly to see what is your particular case, okay, after this webinar. Olga, thank you
so
again.
much, guys. It was a pleasure. Let me know if there is something else that you've forgotten to ask. Please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. We'll see you
Thank
later.
you. Bye.
So guys, for the rest of the sessions, at this session, we are going to talk here about the funding opportunity. This is the last session today, and just bear with me. It's going to be a short session because I know that you're probably already full with information, and I want to provide this session for you to also analyze what are your opportunities to get funded and what type of funding is available in the market. So this last session, we are going to have, and there we go, we are going to have a specific information about these three parts of funding: grants, loans, investment, angel investment, and venture capital funds. So first of all, I just want to get a sense from this room, how many of you, and you can just pull your hand, like just raise your hand. How many of you understand what is a grant? Anyone in the audience? If you don't know what is a grant, then I will explain what is a grant. Because this is very important. This is a huge difference in the market for most of the companies that come here. A grant basically is, it's government funding that is not returnable. So that means that, this is free money for entrepreneurs. It's free money that the government of Canada gives to entrepreneurs that are relocating in Canada. It could be that you find these grants available at federal level, provincial level, and local level. That means that, it could be grants, that are aiming for any company located anywhere in Canada. Could be grants that are for companies in a specific located in a province. Every province has have grants. Yeah.
I don't hear you.
You don't hear me?
Okay, yes.
Eduardo.
A little time.
Do you hear me now well?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. So this is the information that I was giving. You can get these grants or free money from the government, federal level, provincial level, and local level. So now, most of our startups have a big question around this because, people are always like, that's a little bit weird why the government will give money, just free money around, and how much is that free money and how I can obtain this free money. The first suspicious questions around grants, why the government will give this money is because, for companies that are relocating here or companies that are aiming to be here in Canada, if they grow, they will create jobs and they will pay taxes. And this is a way that, companies can actually reimburse the government, let's say, for any grants in the past. Not that you have to pay back the government, but when you grow, in a way, you're paying back the government. You are paying taxes, and then those taxes are used basically to help companies in the early stage. So the government of Canada is one of those governments that have lots of grants. And to give you an idea, $5.9 billion is money that is available in grants in the Canadian market. That's a lot of money for entrepreneurs or people that are aiming to be entrepreneurs. So when startups come to us and they say, hey, I really want to look at investors, seeking for investment in my company, we normally say, why you are not looking for grants first? Because it makes more sense for us that you get free money first than getting into a debt with an investor, because at the end of the day, it's kind of a debt. Like you are asking money to a person or an institution, And then you are going to be, giving away part of your company. So you are diluting your participation in the company, which is not bad. When you are growing, this is something that is expecting from any company. But at the beginning, when you are establishing a corporation in Canada, and be mindful that we have corporations that are basically invoicing $200,000 per year up to $10 million per year. We have 2 unicorns in portfolio. So we have companies that really have grown fast, and even in the latest stages, let's say, compared with other companies, they have been able to become a part of our programs and understand better how they can reach out funding in the market. So this is a lot of money, right? So we are trying to see how we can leverage that money into our entrepreneurs for them to understand better how to get into these grants. So the first thing to understand is what type of projects are funded by these grants. Why is that you are applying for this money? So there is funding available for different reasons. These are the major reasons: research and development. Let's say that you are, developing a new technology, especially when you are in health tech, green tech, clean tech, technologies that require like a lot of research. Then you have a fund available for that. It sometimes can be huge grants available for this particular part. And then you also have grants for hiring people. If you need talent in the market, you will get grants for that. Or you need also for market expansion. This is one of the grants that is like least, it's not as much used as the other grants. But for example, you have a Canadian company and you want to expand into the States, right? Most people come to Canada not because of the market size, but because of the access to the States, basically, or to Europe. And then, you have the access to some grants for you to, for example, participate in trade shows, cover some travel and accommodation to participate in those trade shows. Sometimes even, there are grants that cover low, like legal situation of the company. For example, when you are signing up agreements with, with potential partners in another country, and you need a legal representation to sign those agreements. Sometimes those grants are covering those, legal parts. Sometimes they cover, for example, intellectual property in other country. It may be in a percentage, it may be not 100%. Some other cases can be up to 100%, depending of the type of grant that you are going to find in the market. So how the funding works is different depending grant from grant. Again, you can find a grant of $5,000 or a grant of $500,000. It's like there's like so many different grants, and there are available grants that work different depending of the type of company, depending of how much you have done in the market. Some of them are dependable of that you are already with a permanent residence, and some others are dependable of that you have a Canadian corporation minimum. So the funding works depending of what type of grant are you looking for. And I have to say that, in Canada, there are more than 100 grants available. And that's probably a very small number in compared, like probably is way more than that. But let's say, because we work with technology companies, for technology companies per se, that's the amount available right now in number of grants. The timing to apply to grants is also kind of different. I know from experience, I'm original from Colombia. I know from experience that certain countries, certain, we have different countries here, not just Latin American countries. Applying for grants can be very difficult and can be extremely bureaucratic. Not saying that here is not, but it's not as bad as in emerging markets trying to apply for grants. So the government has normally a fiscal year, it starts in April and finishes in March. So most of the grants, not all the grants, but most of the grants open up in between January and April. And, people try to apply as best as possible. Some of the grants, you will find out that it's first come, first serve, meaning that, when you see the grant, if you apply first, nobody else has applied, then you get the grant based on, the number of applicants that are getting on this grant. And some others are per, profile of the application. Sometimes the government wants to work, for example, with minorities, or they want to work, with women or people of color, like depending of what, there are some requirements depending of the grant. So, and the when apply depend also of the institution that is holding the grant. The stage of the company also plays a role. Sometimes, there are government grants that are good for ideation. There are some other government grants that are good for later stage companies. That means that, the government will give most of the time grants to companies that are less than 500 employees and less than $10 million in revenue, for what is called here the small medium businesses is under that definition. And also, it depends on the industry. So it doesn't have to be technology. We work in particular with technology, and that's why most of the information that you see here is related with technology, but it doesn't have to be technology, when you apply for grants. And of course, the grant also is obtained dependable of the business outcome. So if you're providing results, this is not a free money for you to spend in whatever. You have to make sure that, your business outcome is related with why, the type of proposal you're putting for the project, right? If it's a research and development project and you are aiming to get into an MVP, then, that's for what the grant has been approved. Then you have to get those results at the end. If the grant is for hiring, if you are looking for, high technical staff members, for example, people that are working right now in artificial intelligence or blockchain, or getting into C fractional, which is, very expensive sometimes, staff members that you need to pay on the market, and you are getting a grant for that, then the government, of course, is looking for you to actually prove that you have paid, for that person or that particular staff member that you want to add into your into your team. And same for market expansion and for the other type of grants that can be available in the market. So one particular question, because this is a really broad question, is super broad, is where to find the grants. So if you find the grants first in this, this is one of our partners, is Pocketed. So if you become a part of Pocketed, for those that are in our programs, they have free access to Pocketed. But those that are not in our programs, they have to pay a little bit for Pocketed. I think it's like $20 per year or something like that. It's not that much, really. And you get access to information of all the grants available according with your profile. And your profile means that, the company profile, for example, that you have in the market. And then the platform will filter grants accordingly with that profile. And it will give you a short list of number of grants available that you can probably apply or apply in the future, depending on your profile. So it's a great tool. We super recommend this tool. And it's pretty much, used by our startups when they want to locate grants. Now, the other tool, which is free and you can access right away, right now from your country, is the Canada Business app. You can download it. Is this app, and I'm not sure if you are going to look at really well here from my cell phone, but in this app, you will have something that is called Finance My Business. In that Finance My Business, you will find different grants. And again, it's a little bit overwhelming because the information that is given by the government of Canada, it will be dependable of where the company is located. They require to have you or your company located in Canada in order for you to obtain that grant. So it could be research and development, tax credits, or tax refunds. It depends if you are a woman, if you are a part of a minority, whatever is the case, you can locate those grants here in the app. but also be mindful that, you know, it probably will it will probably direct you to, depending also the province. So in that app, I love to recommend it because there is not just grants information that you have there. You also have, you know, information about how to start your business, how to find permits and license, you know, how to protect your ideas, and how to discover other programs and services in the market. So it's a lot of compilation of information there, and it will take a while for you to understand what is going to be the best grant, what is going to be available in the market for you, depending of your own situation. So that's the first thing. Now, I want to tap in what is loans a little bit. I know, bear with me, I understand from the entrepreneurial perspective and even from the personal perspective, people don't want to hear about loans because in emerging markets it's so bad. You know, sometimes to take loans is just impossible and nobody wants to get into debt. But Canada has very good opportunities for loans that sometimes are zero in interest rate and sometimes are like so low in interest rate that is almost perceived as a grant. So before I tap on this part, I want to ask to the audience any questions about grants so I can continue maybe in the part of loans. There is no questions, or you can put it later on. I can certainly answer, you know, at the end of this presentation. So in regards of loans, you know, I love to work or to refer to the Bank Development of Canada because that's not a regular bank, just for those that are here and don't know about BDC. This is a second level bank that works with entrepreneurs, just with entrepreneurs. This is not a bank where you open bank accounts or you get a credit card. This is a bank that basically finances entrepreneurs. So it gives you, yes, financial support through loans, you know, that again, can be very low interest rate. They also give advisory services like, you know, for example, you need to hire maybe sometimes consultants. They can give you a loan to hire consultants that are very high level, and they have in between them also very good consultants for a very reasonable price. Anyone here with questions? Because I hear like somebody has the open mic or not. Okay, so in case that anyway, in case that you have any questions, guys, just let me know. I'm happy to answer. You can interrupt me anytime. So once again, you know, advisory services is a pretty good service that you can have here. Also, capital. This is a great opportunity for people. You know, for example, if you are raising money, and let's say you are raising $1 million, and you already have investment or, you know, or investment commitment from some of your investors, and you have probably raised $700,000, you are missing $300,000. Guess what? BDC can step up and say, hey, I want to be the last investor. I can complete that investment round, okay, those $300,000 based on the lead investor that you have in the same terms and conditions that your lead investor. This is a great opportunity for startups in particular, because sometimes it's difficult to get investment in the market or complete investment rounds. So with BDC, you have that opportunity. You can probably complete investment rounds, and that's great. Now, you have also in the same website tools available for people that are looking for, you know, to understand how much it will cost you a loan or how much it will cost you an advisory service based on your profile, based on, you know, how much will I pay for that. It will give you all the information right away there. And also will give you free guidance and publications, market research information for different type of businesses. So, for example, many times to obtain a loan, to obtain an angel investment fund, to obtain a grant, sometimes you have to work in business plans. I know this is kind of one of the worst that, you know, in entrepreneurs here, because Many times I get entrepreneurs telling me, I'm so tired to be working in business plans and have this document here and there. But unfortunately for this type of institutions, even for partners, when you want to get into a merger and acquisition, you have to have those tools available. So we use different tools to get into business plans that are more like automatized tools, you know, like you can use in a way that is very like, friendly, and you can complete information with explanations here and there that can help you to understand why is that, people are asking you this question and how you can complete the business plan in a way that is presentable for banks or for investment. So all those tools are available also in BDC. We have also Futurepreneur. Futurepreneur also has a business plan tool that we use all the time here with our entrepreneurs. And of course, the part of guidance and business publications that help you also to understand better the market scope. And these are free tools, free information that you get there. So you are not making a decision, a light decision into bring a company here or request a loan. You can have all this information in advance and later on decide whether or not you will want to jump in a loan, especially with BDC, which again I say this is one of the institutions that we use because it's government and because it's accessible and because people don't pay that much for loans. So now that I have covered grants, I have covered loans, then I will cover what is angel investment. Okay, so not sure anyone with questions so far. Doesn't seem like, but if you have questions, again, put it in the chat. So the angel investment part is for what many people come to us, and they normally ask us where I can find angel investment, how is angel investment, how it works, in Canada, how we can do this. Many times people also have the wrong perception. People may have the perception that this may be similar to Silicon Valley because we are close to the States, and people perceive Canada sometimes as the 51 state of the US, and they think, well, things are going to be similar. It's not close to similar to Silicon Valley, and it's maybe also what you hear from Silicon Valley is not close to what is the reality there either. There are many similitudes in how the investors think, how investors will put money on our startups. So the first organization that we normally go with is the National Angel Capital Organization. So that organization, which is NACO, in Spanish, I know that doesn't have the best name ever, but NACO provides, it's one of the largest organizations with the number of investors that we have in Canada all through the country. So it gives you information, it gives you also events where you can network with investors. Those events sometimes are online, sometimes are in person now that we have past pandemic times. So it will provide you connection with investors, but be mindful, investors get a lot of emails per day, call emails, or, just LinkedIn messages, and people just reaching out with the same type of text. I have a great idea, you should invest on us, this is what we have, I want you to review this. And if an investor is getting like 400 emails, which is not an exaggeration here, believe me, they get a lot of emails per day or per week to review the decks. They are not, believe me, they are not going to do that. At least they are extremely motivated to do that. How they get motivated to do that is sometimes is by referral. So they make work with other investors, or they make work with accelerators like us or other incubators in the market, which, by the way, we work very well with them. We work in collaboration with many of the incubators and accelerators in the market. So they sometimes ask us, do you have a startup with this profile? We want to start investment, investing in XYZ type of startups. So it's important that you get in a relationship with institutions not just like us, but the other incubators and accelerators, because we have the network sometimes for you guys. So we can certainly short out, the time that you spend trying to reach out investors. Other organizations here like Keretsu, for example, this is one of the largest in the world. Equation Angels is more, Equation and Jurok Angels is more like an Ontario type of institutions, but of course we have angel investors in every single province, and sometimes in most of the small medium cities they have their own organization. So that's why you see this number here, because 20,000 to 50,000 individual groups in Canada that are angel investment firms or venture capital firms. So where angel invests or a VC, a venture capital will invest, they will invest close by. They don't invest in Chile or in Colombia or in Brazil. They don't invest outside of the country for a very, very reasonable thing, is that they don't know the economy and the politics around that country. They don't even talk the same language. They don't know how the investment is going to grow or not in this other country. They have very little information sometimes about other countries different from Canada and the States, for example. Sometimes the relationship with Europe can be close. So you can have maybe investors investing in the States, and again, the opposite, people in the United States investing in Canada, in Canadian corporation. But it's because of the proximity and the understanding of the business cultural situation around. So this is the first misconception. People will come with extremely good businesses sometimes from emerging markets, and they believe that investor is going to put the money there. They are not. They normally put the money in a Canadian corporation or a Delaware corporation, which you hear probably very often. People say, well, we are going to open a Delaware corporation, but that cannot be just a shell corporation. It has to have some kind of traction in order for them to invest. So when they invest is when they have an open fund. Not always an investor have an open fund. You can have in LinkedIn profiles people that call themselves investors, and they probably are investors, but they may not have money right away. They may already have funded a number of companies, 1 year, and they are waiting for the results of the first fundings that they are given in the market. It's very important that you look at the profile of the investor, because investors can be very selective. Investors can be very specific on industry because they have the expertise there and they can guide you better. So an investor in fintech, for example, is very unlikely that is going to invest in a health tech solution, because he or she may not have the information about how to grow a company in a health tech, in the health tech sector, for example. They may perceive that sector is too hard, or vice versa, right? So just try to see what type, what type of sector they are investing on, and also look at the profile of the companies that they are investing on. Because if you have a very similar profile of a company they already invested, they may not be interested in investing on you because they will feel like you can be a competitor for this other company, but they may be interested to chat with you about a merger and acquisition, for example, or a way to partner between the two companies. So that's important. How they invest is, depending of the company, depending of the stage, and depending of, how much money are you going to need. Many people come again with the example of $1 million. I'm raising $1 million, and there is no one single investor that is going to provide you a check for $1 million. So you may need to have 2, 3, 4 investors that will provide, different size checks. And you will have a lead investor that can, probably perhaps make introductions with the other investors that all in total will put the funding together. So depending what you are looking for, angel investment of VC funds for sure can give bigger checks, but VC funds also are expecting that you already have raised money. You don't go to a VC fund right away. You go a VC fund when you have raised already money, or when your company is in extremely good traction, and I'm meaning like probably more than 5, 10 million revenue already with, you know, high valuation. VC funds are always the latest stage investment. And the time to approach to an investor, don't approach to investors when you have ideas, because everyone has an idea. Every single one has an idea. So you approach with them when you have something that you can prove in the market that is working, that people actually is going to buy. You know, you don't go with them with something that you're assuming people are going to buy. We are assuming that we are going to go do good. You maybe have a history to be a serial entrepreneur, but you know, the new idea or the new project that you're putting together is still work in progress. You still don't have customers. You know, with some exceptions, for example, again, in health tech, green tech, clean tech, it can be, you know, different, the approach. But in general, you go with them with something very solid, and whatever you're going to approach to them, like, you know, if you're looking again, same example, $1 million, you have to be already ready to discuss equity, ready to discuss valuation. You are never going to have the right answer to them in regards of equity or valuation, but you have to have a reasonable point of discussion with them. So here I want to show you, you know, a little bit of how investment works in Canada. So you see, there's a lot. Most of the investment are happening here in Southern Ontario, and just in Ontario, you know, it's basically Ontario gets 40% of the investment around that amount of money. Be mindful that I've been able to live in Montreal and Vancouver. You know, I love the two cities, and I know that they have very also vibrant ecosystems, but the reality is that most of the money is in Ontario for what is angel investment and venture capital. Now that you don't have here, you can see here that, you know, there is some leading around, but the East Coast certainly has some strong leadership in funding. And these are some graphics that I think it was very good to share with you guys, because it kind of give you a perspective of investment in the market. So this is from application up to, you know, companies that get funded. So you can see just 5% of the company to get to apply to a venture capital firm or angel investment firm get actually funded. And there is a huge, you know, like a shortage here, and from the application to the presentation, just 20% of them get to present to an angel investor, and just 6% of them get to pass the due diligence, finally getting into that 5% that get funded. So these are the type of technologies that investors and venture capital firms are, you know, basically investing right now in the country. So still, ICT tend to be, you know, the one, and ICT can be very general, as you can see. Health tech, you know, consumer discretionary, you know, that depends, you know, it could be also a combination of different sectors. But you can see here, most of the time is ICT. And you can see also here, what are the type of, you know, of investment funnel they will prefer. Now in the States, for example, it's very common to go to SAFE. In Canada, it's very common to go to preferred shares. All this information, and this is you know, the reason why I had my website open a few minutes ago when you guys enter into this you know, this session. All this information you can find it in here. This is, you know, the information that I'm sharing here with you comes from the NACO annual report. This year, a report was just, you know, released in the, basically in the, in 2022, early 2022, with, I think it's close to 65, 70 pages, the report. And it has very, very detailed information. It's free for you to download, and it's free for you to access this information so you understand better the state of angel investment in Canada. So it's achievable as far as you have a company that is already producing, that is already in traction in the Canadian or the state in general, what is North America, Canada, US market. Okay, so with that, I would like to finish my presentation here. So I think, yeah, after this is the last presentation that we have. Any question, guys, that you may have about investment or grants or you know, loans in the market? You can open your microphone if you want to, but if no questions, again, this session is being recorded. So I'm going to give just one few seconds here. If somebody wants to perhaps put a question. Okay. You like to the name or link of the grants? Okay, so yeah, for sure. So I'm going to first, you know, the first one is Pocketed, right? We were talking about Pocketed. So hold on one second. I'm going to give you that. So it's giving me here the Pocketed. Okay. Remember that for grants, there's a lot of information available. These are not just the two sources, but I want to give you this source because it's good. Yeah, that's Hello Pocketed. And the other is the Canada Business App. It's an app. It's Canada, Canada Business App. And it's an app that you basically download in your cell phone, or you know, you can find it also in a normal website, but that's how it's called. Any other question, guys, that you may have? If you don't have any other questions, then again, this information has been recorded. I really appreciate for all of you guys to be, you know, connected with us. We are having, you know, new programs coming up now in 2023. Market validation program will start in February. And again, we have different type of companies in market validation, not just, you know, the ones that are in ideation. We don't take companies in ideation. We just take companies that have traction in their home country with, you know, some technology involved. So if you're ready for that, we are closing basically, you know, applications now on December 16th. We have an info session coming up, which is a free info session where we are going to be talking about our programs in next week, if I'm not wrong. So if you go to our website, you will see there the info session coming up. If you are interested in any of the programs that we have, then you are more than welcome to be a part of that info session and get information about our programs. I would like to thank you for being here. For those that registered through Eventbrite, this information is going to be available and we are going to email the webinar to you guys. Thank you and have a great day.